Today, I want to speak about a really important topic for me, which is how to support boys through puberty. So, the next few episodes, I'm going to be talking about this subject because for the last maybe 2.5 years, I've been getting request after request, particularly from single mothers, asking, what do I do to support my son through puberty? I've learned over the years that hormones play a massive role in the outcomes of someone's health, someone's personality sometimes, someone's behavior, expression, perception of the world. And puberty is a time that I don't think we focus on nearly enough in the modern world. I wanted to say in this country, in America, but it's really all over the world. And I've learned this because for the last 3 years, I do a men's embodied masculinity group, which welcomes men from all over the planet. And we get an international group of people. The last one was the biggest. It was about 85, 86 men. And we spend a whole month talking about puberty. And it amazes me. Each man from different cultures everywhere you can imagine all have the same experience, which is no one taught me what to do with this sudden change in my body. Puberty is an initiation into a sexual body, into a maturing body. And it starts, can be quite young for some people. Usually for boys, it's around age 11, 12. But it goes all the way until age 18, 19. Puberty is a good 6 to 8 years. And there's different factors that tell you when someone's done maturing sexually. But what's important about it to me are those first few years when a young boy in particular is being flooded with testosterone. He's being initiated into a whole new experience. His body is not the body he had before he started puberty. There's the prepubescent body, and then there's the pubescent body, and then the post-pubescent body. But that pubescent body that's rapidly changing and developing, and the voice is changing, and the genitals are maturing, and there's hair growing in certain places, and there's different odors and different feelings emerging, and other feelings being repressed. This is a potentially and often traumatic time for a young boy because no one's teaching him how to relate to testosterone, which is this massive force inside of his body that's initiating him into manhood. And testosterone is a big part of what I like to teach people, especially single mothers and single parents and even fathers who didn't have the same kind of guidance from their father. Because historically, we would have these beautiful cultures that were set up, like indigenous cultures, for a very long time that had rites of passage ceremonies where when a boy or a girl was starting to develop into a man or a woman, they would remove them from the other sex. They would split the sexes, and you would go into these sometimes years for certain cultures and tribes. Other times it was monthly or through the seasons. You would have these initiatory rituals and practices and ceremonies that made conscious what was very could be and now is very much in the shadows, which is your entire body is transforming. Your mind is transforming. Who you are is transforming, and we're going to help you hold this transformation and teach you what to do with it. What I'm going to start with talking about today, and I really, really want your comments here. Your comments on this video are going to, in real time, change the next videos I make. So I really want to hear your feedback and what comes up for you and questions you might have. The first thing I'm going to focus on today, I was just talking to my wife about this. If there was ever one thing around supporting boys through puberty I could really highlight, one thing, it would be pornography. And I'm going to explain why pornography is so important when you're understanding it within the context of developmental trauma and of biological development. The first thing to understand is puberty is a massive hormonal experience. It's not just like a growth spurt. It's not just having wet dreams or sudden erections or sexual arousal. It's about your hormones completely transforming. And for a boy who's developing in an average way, being flooded with testosterone. So levels of testosterone, very, very high levels flooding the body from the testes and starting to tell the body, it's time to change, it's time to mature, it's time to shift. And what's fascinating during that hormonal shift is testosterone brings a lot of agitation with it. There can be some aggression that comes from it. there can be an increase of adrenaline, there can be a decrease in feeling emotions or being able to cry or express emotions. This is something I have found to be true with transsexual men. So people who were born female, who developed as females and later in life in their 20s used sex reassignment surgery and cross-sex hormones to transition into living as men. These transsexual men have shared with me over the years, and you can look these things up yourself, the incredible changes they go through in the first year of testosterone, how they suddenly can't cry anymore when they watch a movie that used to make them cry, how they feel a sense of isolation they didn't used to feel, how they're suddenly really aroused in the genitals in a way they never have been before, and like nothing can really scratch that itch. There's these interesting features of testosterone that I've learned, maybe 15 years ago from transsexual men that put into context what I went through. And I'm an intersex man. So I went through the first 14, 15 years of my life very much dominated by estrogen to the point where I developed breasts and hips and felt very feminine, didn't believe I was even a boy until later on in my puberty. And then because of my type of intersex condition, which is not genital based, but it was hormonal, my testes were able to make enough testosterone around 14, 15. And because of that, I started developing more as a boy. I still had my breasts and still have my hips. I had my breasts removed when I was 23. I had top surgery. But I remember very clearly the difference of being flooded with estrogen and being flooded with testosterone. So I have this personal developmental experience that I can always call upon that I don't find in many books or classrooms about the power of these hormones and how they really, really do change us and how we need more support going through them. So take a boy again, going through puberty, lots of testosterone, lots of physical changes in the body. And suddenly he loses access to feel and express emotions. This is very common when a lot of testosterone is first developed. Over time, as this boy matures into a man with the right support and the right personal practices, he can find his inner emotions. He can even invoke his feminine, which is very important to do. I believe in invoking the feminine and the masculine, regardless of what sex you're born as. But I find it important for boys or for people to understand that boys very early on in their puberty will start to feel a sense of shutdown. And what's so absolutely tragic about this is no one really talks about it. No one says to a boy before he's going into puberty, this thing's going to happen in the next year or two where your body's going to start changing. And part of that change is you're going to lose access to your emotions. You might feel a little aggravated. You might feel feelings you've never felt in your life. They're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not disgusting. You're not a bad person. It's actually natural. You just need help learning how to be with it. No one says that to these boys. And when I say that in the first month of my men's group, I watch grown men on camera start to cry. I watch tears stream down their face. I hear them tell me, oh my goodness, I just went into grief for the first time about my puberty. And I assess from these big groups and from men I've worked with over the years how traumatic puberty is for most boys. Now, I'm not suggesting it's not for girls, but this is not about girls right now. I'm talking about boys, so I'm going to keep it on that. The puberty is so traumatic for boys because not only is there this sudden hormonal shift, there's a physical shift in your body. Your genitals are getting bigger and they're getting, your penis is getting erect and you're highly aroused. You don't understand why you're constantly thinking about sex and wanting to get off. And there's nowhere to go with that. You've lost access to your emotions. You've lost the ability to express emotions if you even had that to begin with. And you're filled with a lot of arousal and a lot of adrenaline. That's a really difficult, overwhelming body and biology to be in, especially the first couple months as it's happening, not to mention the next few years as it just keeps peaking. This is where pornography comes in. Instead of having connection, instead of moving from that adrenalized hyper testosterone body, we sit still, turn on a screen, and masturbate. And what happens in that moment is so developmentally important that I have to make this video all about that. The body is flooded with a cocktail of different hormones that help us feel like we're having a connection to somebody, that almost feel like being in love, that feel like euphoria, serotonin, dopamine, even oxytocin. These hormones can emerge as a man is watching porn and climaxing while watching porn because you're getting this kind of synthetic connection through the screen. It's essentially simulating what it would be like to be intimate with a person. Now, here's where the problem is. It's not about exploring sexuality. That's a beautiful thing to do. And pornography, in one way, is a way for kids to safely explore sexual ideas and fetishes without going into the actual world and meeting predators. However, kids shouldn't really be accessing pornography by themselves. Like, I hear the argument, I've heard it many times, that porn is good for sexual development. I happen to think the opposite. And I was extremely dependent and addicted to porn throughout my sexual development. So I'm speaking from my personal experience and clinical experience from so many of the men I have worked with individually and in groups. Porn is extremely limiting for sexual development because we end up using it as a way to soothe emotions that want to come out. And then we get that confused with sexual arousal and passion and connection and intimacy. So no boy I know is using pornography to feel more connected to himself. No 13, 14-year-old boy I know is conscious enough and has enough practices, under his belt, pun intended, to say to himself, I'm going to sit here and watch this and feel where it's coming up in my body and learn about myself. That's not why boys are using porn. It's not why most men use porn. Boys use porn because they don't know where else to pour this sexual energy, this frustration, this tension, this overwhelm. They don't journal. They don't have groups. They don't have a place to compete in a healthy, beautiful way with their colleagues and friends and elders, or even be with their colleagues and friends and elders. Instead, porn helps them be isolated and helps them have a euphoric response, a temporary euphoric response from the orgasm and the stimulation, especially if you're edging while you're watching porn, which means you're keeping yourself from climax. And I know men who have told me they'll for 3 hours watch pornography to edge themselves because the stimulus, the dopamine, is what they're actually after. They're not after the climax. And if they are, it's just for the euphoria, but it's not for the connection. You can't connect to somebody on a screen who you don't even know, who you're watching as a voyeur. You're not having an actual experience with them. So if you consider that a lot of boys spend 1 to 3 times a day watching pornography, and I would say even more accurately, using pornography, you can start to deduce that not only is the hormonal cocktail disturbing for a developing nervous system or the adrenals, but the practice of isolating yourself and then soothing through the numbness that comes from that endless stimulation through edging and euphoria, the dopamine, the serotonin, all these releases of hormones and neurotransmitters. This experience is a developmentally traumatic experience because boys are learning to sequester and to numb out by pleasing themselves sexually. Now, that means by the time a lot of these boys meet their first partner, whether it's a girl or a boy, they've already been quite conditioned, perhaps thousands of times, via pornography, to disconnect, to isolate, and to numb out while experiencing sexual arousal and while having sexual intimacy or intercourse. And one part of numbing out is the sheer fact that it's a screen. Anyone that sits here and watches a screen, it might even be happening right now if you're watching this on YouTube. When you're watching someone else or something else happen, for a continuous period of time, especially when the thing is stimulating or arousing to the body, you're getting aroused without movement. So another part of this is most boys and men are watching porn with no movement besides their hand on their penis. There's no hips being moved. The legs and the feet aren't moving. A lot of times they're not even breathing. Their shoulders are tense. The body is in a freeze and all the energy is going to the genitals, which means developmentally as well, the body is losing its ability to develop with a sensitivity, a sensuality throughout every inch and pore of the whole body. It's all going to the penis, the genitals. It's all being focused there. So pleasure and sex becomes genitally focused. There's not also kissing. There's not also a partner saying, whoa, Paul, this is too much for me. There's no up and down. There's just this trajectory, this predictable up, up, up until I orgasm. And it becomes a dependency because it's predictable. Boys can take their frustration, their emotions, their insecurities, their confusion, their overwhelm to the bedroom, close the door, and escape. A lot of you have teenage boys who are escaping several times a day via pornography. That's just one way, but I'm using this as the number one because unlike video games and other ways that little boys might escape, this is usually an isolated practice. This is an isolated practice that is extremely arousing and stimulating to the whole body, not just sexually, but the whole nervous system, the brain, the adrenals. The body is getting heightened and stimulated while isolating and then compartmentalizing the experience. A 13-year-old boy doesn't leave his room and say, "Dad, I just had this amazing orgasm. Can you teach me about, pornography and how to be with my body?" He leaves the room and sits at the dinner table as if nothing's happened. So he's learning compartmentalization of his sexual arousal and sexuality. This kind of development of depending on pornography does not create boys that are much more sexually open or much more sexually mature. It creates boys and then men that are very good at sequestering what they really like, how they really feel, and a release of themselves, a true vulnerability and letting go and pleasure. It creates that practice or that habit of doing it in isolation. So a lot of the men I have coached over the years who've come in with their wives or husbands or other partners, their biggest issue is that they don't know how to be with their partner the way they are with their porn, because they developed with this thing that was isolating, that they were able to control, and that gave them a predictable outcome. And that is the last thing a human being is. An actual human being will say stop. An actual human being will lose their erection, or their vagina will go dry, or they will suddenly not have a sense of arousal and need to kiss a little more, need to change something. Actual human beings have these kind of boundaries where, as we're getting stimulated and aroused, there might be a moment where it stops and comes down. We have to come back up. We have to learn each other's bodies. We don't learn that with pornography. We learn a straight track to stimulation and climax. And when we put that in the context of a little developing body, a 12, 13-year-old boy, we're seeing something very similar as we would see cocaine or cigarettes or alcohol. We're seeing a child use a substance that biochemically alters them so they can escape some discomfort they're feeling. And this is very tragic for a lot of boys. And this is not spoken about for a lot of boys. And like I said in the beginning of this, I've been asked for a while to do a specific offering for parents, in particular single mothers, who don't know what to do with their teenage boys, who want to learn about things no one talks about and get some insights somatically, how to parent and support them through this puberty. So they have a chance at getting into the world with some embodiment without being disembodied from their sex and without letting that natural power of testosterone put them into dominating characteristics or personalities or experiences where they're dominating other people. Instead, learning how to relate to the testosterone that's coming into their body. So as men, they can use it as it's intended, which is to create security, to compete in beautiful ways, to build, to lift, to support. Testosterone is a gorgeous addition to this human race when we learn how to be in relationship to it. When we're not in relationship to it, it takes over. And especially for boys who developed with a dependency on pornography, this testosterone and this force with their arousal, they have no control over it. It's been so practiced every day to hyper arouse, to get away from emotions, that then that's how they use sex with their partners, to get away from emotions, not to connect more deeply. So I'm doing a webinar on Saturday, August 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern that's going to go over all this and so much more. And I'm going to be linking you to a beautiful group of men, as well as a man named Trevor Spring, who's starting an organization specifically for parents and teenage boys virtually. So you get this kind of monthly, weekly support as they're going through puberty. So there's an actual support group for kids and parents who need to or want to navigate this, because it just doesn't exist. And what we're losing here in the modern day, or what's going wrong, quote unquote, in the modern day with men, it's not that men are inherently toxic or inherently dominating. It's men, unlike women, are flooded with testosterone, which is a very, very powerful hormone. And if we don't teach boys how to use it and how to relate to it, it ends up taking over them, and then some pretty bad things can occur. So please leave any comments or questions you have in this video. Like I said, the next few videos I'm going to make are going to be on this. If you're listening to this on my podcast, hop on over to YouTube. You can make a comment right here about it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I can't wait to hear your requests. I can't wait to hear what need this meets for you, and anything I need to be considering that I'm not yet. I just started today with pornography. The next few I'll go into other pieces. I'll see you next time, okay? Bye. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.